Welcome to the journal. Hello and welcome back to the journal. This is entry number 3, where I talk about the promise fulfilled. After waiting on the promise and receiving the promise to finally have that promise fulfilled when I delivered my son on July 1st, 2018 at 11:55 p.m. and to see him smile, to hear him cry for the first time, to discover that he had dimples, that first time experience of I'm actually a mom. So leading up to the day of his birth, I was still dealing with a lot of uncertainties. It just so happened the day before I went into labor, we finally got the keys to our new apartment, which I was so thrilled about. And nothing was prepared but the nursery by the time I went into labor. No furniture in the house, nothing but his nursery. He had his crib, his clothes, and everything was there and ready for him, but we had no other furniture in the house. But I knew once I got out of the hospital, we were going to our house, and I was pretty excited about that. And it was just a lot of other things that were going on, but I was excited to see my baby for the first time. He finally was here, and we had to spend a few extra days in the hospital due to not being able to keep his temperature regulated. It was a up and down with his temperature, and so they kept having to take him to the NICU for just to warm him up and to get his temperature regulated, and they would bring him back to me. And it was kind of a back and forth for a few days, and finally on the 4th of July we got to go home, and I was so excited to finally be able to start this journey as a mom. And even though I was so excited to start my journey, there was a part of me that was depressed and hurting because I had still been dealing with losing my godchildren. And that was a part of my journey that was such a challenge. I wanted so much to just be so overjoyed and thrilled about my son finally being here, and my promise that I had been waiting for, and the thing that I had desired for so long was finally here. But I had just lost 2 jewels that I loved so much, and I was having mixed emotions. I was so happy about my baby, but I was so torn that I lost 2 that were my babies. And it was just a really hard season for me. And I was going through postpartum depression in the beginning of my motherhood, but I was also suffering postpartum from losing my godsons. So at the time, I really didn't feel like I had a space to really express where I was and how I felt. And I had so many people telling me, you shouldn't be depressed. You should be excited. You finally got your baby that you've been waiting for. And nobody really understood where I was and how I felt. And I felt like I was in this black hole. And I wanted to have all the exciting experiences, but I was hurting, and I had a deep hurt. And the other part of that was that hurt was causing me not to be able to fully be excited about my baby. So I felt like I was robbed in so many different ways, and I had to really seek God through it all. I'm grateful that God has always been a constant in my life, because in that season, I really feel like if I did not have a relationship with God, I don't know if I would have made it. That leads me to say that though the promise was fulfilled, and I was so grateful for the opportunity to finally be a mom, circumstances and things that had taken place in my life had robbed me of that fullness of joy at that moment. And I was battling so many other emotions from so much that had taken place during my pregnancy and toward the end of my pregnancy, that I felt like, God, I've waited so long for this. Why? Why does it have to happen like this? And it took me a while to get to the place where I could be present in the moment for what God had finally allowed me to have. And so we have to learn how to endure through even those deep, dark times. And we have to stay in the presence of God, and we have to stay connected to God, because in those seasons, if you don't have that connection, you won't survive. So having that relationship with God and knowing that He is there even in those dark moments, even in those times where we want to have joy, but we feel like it can't happen. Having that relationship, having that connection with God is what is going to sustain you. So even when the promise is fulfilled, it's not always peaches and cream. It's not always the rainbow at the end of the storm, because the storm wasn't over yet. And so I was grateful that the promise was fulfilled, and I am still to this day grateful that the promise was fulfilled. But I understand that even though the storm seems to be over, we could still be in that storm and not necessarily see the light at the end of the tunnel yet. So that connection to Christ is necessary. And I'll continue to talk about that in the next entry, and how keeping that connection and keeping your mind in Christ, even when it's hard, is necessary. Thank you for joining me. I hope you come back for entry number 4, and I hope something that was said encourages you, blesses you, and pushes you to keep going. Have a blessed one. In honor of my dad's birthday tomorrow, I want to share a small clip to honor him. I miss him, and he was my greatest inspiration. So I hope you enjoy.
God is the reason I live. God is the reason I live. God is the reason I live.